Okay, everybody, I'd like to, we'll start here very shortly here. Okay, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 2 o'clock. What's that? 1 o'clock. Or sorry, 1 o'clock, sorry. Feels like 2. Administration business, we'll get right into 2.1. To have a motion for the adoption of the agenda. Councillor Richardson, seconded by Councillor Joyce. And 2.2 is the declaration of community interest. Seeing none. And 2.3 could have a motion for the adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Joyce, seconded by Councillor Richardson. 3.0, there's no deputations, and we'll get right into presentations, and we'll start off with 4.1 with the 2025 operating budget kickoff presentation by Sarah Bukaboom, the Director of Corporate Services.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of Budget Committee, all staff who have comprised the majority of the work into this budget, and to members of Council and the public that are following along with us today. We are pleased to present you with version 1, and I very much caveat version 1 of the 2025 operating budget. We're still fairly early in our process. We have the following agenda items. I won't read those line by line, and we'll get right into it. By way of a little bit of background and education on the operating budget, the Municipal Act is quite succinct in what they stipulate is required under an annual budget. They must be balanced, so they have to have enough revenue to offset the gross expenses. They are to be created annually and approved annually, and they cannot rely on debt to finance them. Debt is solely to be used for long-term capital assets that have an asset life greater than the value of 1 year for purposes of the operating budget. So adhering to the Municipal Act, we present to you the 2025 budget today. In order to balance the budget, there are a number of revenue tools that can be used. Property taxes, hotel accommodation tax, some of the things we discussed at the Budget Committee at the previous meeting. Fees and charges is a large component of a financing source. Investment income, using any special services or area rates, and development charges and reserve financing. As an average, Municipal Finance Officers Association, MFOA, defines for us that the municipal average of property tax is 41% of a gross operating budget in terms of the revenue. Here at the City of Kawartha Lakes, our revenue from tax equals 58%. So we're going to keep digging into that and understand the impacts and why we are so high compared to some of our colleagues across the province. Just an interesting fact that we came across in the last week or two. Pardon me for the technical difficulties. Thank you, Constance. Financial overview of property tax. As we're all aware, we're still on the 2016 MPAC assessment base in terms of our property values. We're still awaiting the province to give us the go-ahead and the legislation to increase the property values to today's market value. But our taxes range between residential, we have commercial, the assessed value of the property comes into play, the type of commercial versus residential mix at this municipality. We're rather high in our residential, which is the lower of the tax rate, so therefore skews our ability to collect a higher tax value in terms of revenue. Municipal services provided. As a single tier, you are tasked with providing quite a myriad of services that not all municipalities are responsible to deliver. Size, location, and population of the municipality is also a factor in determining the property tax revenue. And this graph might become familiar to you. We used it often in the 2024 budget. It just shows the volume of roads networks that the City of Kawartha Lakes has to maintain and to invest in. You will see that if you took a short trip from Kawartha Lakes to Florida and back, that is the extent of the geographic disparity of our roads network. And yet, in terms of population density, compared to the City of Toronto or even Peterborough, we are very low in terms of our intensity and the ability to levy that cost against the ratepayers. I'm going to stop clicking. I'm not qualified. I'm going to rely on our clerk's office. And one more back, if you don't mind, Constance. One more back, slide 7, if you don't mind. Thank you. In this budget, as everybody is aware, the city is committed to the housing pledge. We have 6,500 homes that are to be in place by the year 2031, and the province Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing is working with us closely to monitor our progress. Our population has increased according to Stats Canada between 2016 and 2021, and we're continuing to monitor that pretty much monthly in terms of how we're doing with our MPAC, our building permits, etc. So all that to say, we're at the precipice of trying to deliver on our current services as well as determine what growth services are required in this budget. Next slide, please, Constance. On 8 is just an example of the myriad of services offered at the City of Kawartha Lakes and delivered. Bit of a pie chart just showing the percentage of costs included in each of those categories. And the next slide is a trend of the operating budget expenditures. Your approved 2024 budget was approximately $253 million. So when we take the mayor's directive to adhere to the long-term financial plan of 3% operating plus 1.5% capital infrastructure levy, one would estimate that 2025 should come in at about a $264 million gross budget. We are slightly higher than that today in our version 1, but we're still early in the process, so we don't want to hinder that with our progress. And the next slide. In terms of reserves, over the last 5 years, the city has been quite astute, and council and staff have been bringing forward some very good strategies to return what monies are available to the reserves. So while this budget does set aside money in reserves again and continues to do that, some of the influxes and the contributions to the reserves through operating surpluses in years past has set you in good stead in terms of your reserve balances. 2021, you'll notice on the slide, was a bit of an anomaly, and that was the year that the province produced the COVID funding for us, so we had large surpluses in 2021. I do want to caveat this by saying, because we have been right-sizing the budget, so to speak, and fine-tuning them over the last year and into this year's, the anticipation of year-end surpluses, the same extent we've been enjoying, may not be there, because we're attempting to more similarly align the budgets to actual experience. On slide 11 is the various funding sources and the different types of budgets that we have. So starting on the left, the property tax support provides financing to this operating budget. You heard the capital on September 3rd from our colleagues in engineering. And then we have special projects, which are those projects that don't quite meet the asset definition for capital budget. Those are funded through your operating budget as well. On the right side is the water and wastewater user rate, much smaller operating and capital budget there, and those are funded separately from only those only those residents that receive a water and sanitary service from the City of Kawartha Lakes. This year is the first year that we've gone through an entire budget from the beginning, adhering to the Strong Mayor legislation, according to Part 6.1 of the Municipal Act. That legislation dictates that we can propose an annual budget subject to council amendments A mayoral veto may occur, and there could be a council override process. The legislation also dictates that the budget shall be prepared on or before February 1st, and if not, council shall then prepare and adopt a budget. The next slide. Thus far in 2024, in regards to the 2025 operating budget, the mayor has provided the following mayoral directives that are available on the city website. The one most pertaining to us today is the direction to adhere all city budgets to the long-term financial plan target. Again, that being the 3% plus the 1.5 from the 2022 long-term financial plan. Also included in the mayoral directive is that we provide a recommended draft 2025 budget to the mayor no later than October 18th, with a target of November 1st to recommend to council for deliberation. So being here before you today sets us in good stead to meeting those timelines from the mayoral directive. What's included in the 2025 operating budget? So again, back to that 3% plus 1.5, our direction is to come to you with a budget within 4.5%. Sorry, to work through with you to prepare a budget within 4.5%. We are not there at this point in time, but again, we are in draft version 1. The 2025 budget direction aligns to the long-term financial plan and includes things like still we're experiencing significant inflation in many of our contracts. We have the pending growth and we're following the growth projections. There's been some new legislation. One example would be the source-separated organics that will commence January 1, 2025. We are monitoring borrowing costs and following the economy and the Bank of Canada interest rates and their prediction for 3.75 prime interest rate by the end of the year. This budget invests in staff retention and attraction. We're still following the uncertain global economy, and we are still striving to build and maintain consistent contributions and investments in reserves. And it limits increased revenues and grants. As a comparator on slide 15, this is from the source identified at the bottom of the slide. From 2024 increases across a myriad of municipalities, they ranged anywhere from 10.6 down to 1.25 in terms of where do we fall in here. So sitting at 4.5, we're pretty much middle of the pack in terms of our comparator median. Our budget process, this lovely graph is available on the city's website, and it walks the public and council through the stages of the budget process. We are doing a lot more work and investing in public engagement during this budget process. We are trying to learn what the public would like to know from us in order for us to inform and address those questions. There is a live jump-in page survey available on the city website. We want to hear from the public. We want to know what they would like to know more about, and we will make every endeavor to meet those needs. Also on the city's website, sorry, the slide is a little bit distorted because there was a lot of meeting dates. You are going to be busy, Budget Committee, between now and the end of September. And then into October, we will work on the deliberation portion. So the public has availability to this calendar. I will note just recently, November 12th at 7 p.m. is the public open meeting for members of the public to attend and provide information to us and or provide solicit delegations to council. So, where are we today? September 12th. We have received and worked with the divisions for this first version. We have current challenge. I use that word loosely because it is so early in the stage yet. We are looking for a balancing factor of 14.7 million on a $260 million gross budget. So we are not yet concerned. We will work through you, Budget Committee, and all the departmental budget presentations to refine that figure going forward. Corporate items overview. In this budget, at this point in time, conservatively, we've included a 2% growth factor. MPAC, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, levies us every 4 times a year on the new properties that have come on stream for property tax throughout the year. So it's still fairly early from an MPAC perspective to tell us a natural indicator of growth. 2% could be fairly conservative, and we'll revisit that as we get more information from MPAC over the month of September and October. We have included a 3% tax increase per the mayoral directive, and we've included the 1.5 capital infrastructure levy. At this point in time, supplementary taxes we have left maintained at a $2.1 million revenue in here. Again, as we learn more from MPAC, when we get the roll updates, we will revisit that, and that would be a budget strategy to help reduce this pressure. I move into the largest section of the budget, which is corporate items. So it doesn't have any particular department. As the Director of Finance and the CAO, we're responsible for managing this section of the budget. It's the largest dollar impact, and it's where your taxes are collected and anything citywide is allocated here. I wanted to point out a few things on this slide. Your tax revenues do not have a variance of 4.4. We have just simply moved a portion of the tax levy to equate to the capital section of the budget. So I'll explain that 2 slides down. Your taxes have in fact had an increase. We've just allocated it between general revenues versus what we've raised to help contribute to the asset management reserve in the capital section. Your Ontario Municipal Partnership Fund is stable this year. At this point in time, we have predicted $7.6 million. And again, you don't have a decrease of $1 million. We've just reallocated the $1 million in aggregate revenue we receive from Ministry of Natural Resources. That's going to be reflected in the capital section. So you'll see that in 2 slides. Other revenues does have a decrease of 1.5 as we've been predicting the drop in the Bank of Canada's interest rates. We have therefore amended our investment income ability to generate revenue, and our penalties and interest on taxes is also in here. As we exert more effort into property tax collection, we're anticipating a status quo on the penalties and interest. It's kind of a mixed bag on penalties and interest. While it helps your budget, ideally we would prefer that people pay their taxes on their due dates. The expenses overall in corporate items, this would include things like your school board payments and your transfers to reserves. I'll get into reserves very shortly. Also, just wanted to point out that the $2 million looks like a reduction budget variance on the top line. We've just reallocated the salaries and wages down to transfer to reserve. So therefore, it's equally offset by the $1.6 million variance on the bottom line interfunctional adjustments. Into the transfer to reserves on the bottom line. We have reallocated how we treat the special projects. We're transferring the money through this budget of 3.9. So thus you see on the transfer to reserve line a variance of 5.3. 3.9 of that is we've just reallocated that from the operating budget. We will place $3.9 million in a reserve and fund the special projects from there, as opposed to treating them like an operating line. So to the capital portion, what we wanted to do here was explain the transfer to asset management reserve. So I'm going to start at the bottom of the schedule where you will see $18.8 million in transfer to reserves. That is where, when you saw the capital budget on September 3rd, if you have seen the asset management reserve financing that goes into the 2025 budget, it comes from this line. We transfer the money to the reserve, and the capital budget takes that immediately and finances the 2025 capital budget. You have increased the transfer to that reserve as per the long-term financial plan to be increased by $2.6 million this year. And in order to fund that transfer to reserve, A few years ago, Council approved the addition of a special infrastructure levy equal to 1.5% of the city's taxes. This year, that equates to approximately $4 million, and the remainder, $13 million, for a total of the $17 million in tax revenues, is the city's support to the capital budget infrastructure levy. So it's a mix of coming from the general tax levy and the special the special infrastructure capital levy. As well, in here is where we repay the debt on capital projects in years past. So once a project is closed, the city goes out and debentures that, and we share some of those financing costs on the interfunctional adjustments with our Kawartha Lakes Housing Corporation, with our airport, etc. So you do receive some funding back on the interfunctional line to pay some of those debts. As I mentioned, this budget does invest in reserves. So on the capital side, your 2025 contribution to the asset management reserve is $17 million, again up $2.6 million from the 2024 budget. Capital contingency, because we have been doing fairly well investing in your reserves, we have taken a year to pause and only contribute $250,000 versus $500 to that reserve. The aggregate reserve has just been a reallocation. We've pulled it into the capital section. Every year in September, you receive $1 million from Ministry of Natural Resources for our aggregate and gravel pit roads, and we reinvest that in the capital program. And then we have a small contribution. We have a stabilization reserve that helps you defray increases in debt principal and interest. In terms of the operating reserves, this budget invests in your special projects of $3.9 million. You'll see some highlights of those shortly. We are transferring to the People Services Stabilization Reserve of 1.2, and that again is used as a buffer in years of wage increases or spikes. We use the reserve to soften that increase year by year, so you're not seeing it on the general tax levy. We invest in Fenelon Falls Power Links, which is a grant that you receive every year, and we put it straight into the reserve. A new line this year is transferring to the Tax Stabilization Reserve for our long-term financial plan. We give you guidance that we require a Tax Stabilization Reserve to help future years when there are spikes in the operating budget. And we are utilizing $243,770 from the OPP area rate stabilization to defray some of that increase in their budget this year. So special projects, again, are those projects that don't fall into the capital asset category, but they require greater than 1 year to complete. And in the operating budget, you only have a 1-year window to spend that dollar. So we move these to treat them more like a capital project. And some of the highlights include a stormwater master plan that has been needed by the city for quite some time. So it is now before you in the special projects. We have some specific drainage issues in the area of Thurstonia Park, and in order to remediate some of the claims in that area, we're recommending that we specifically look at that community. A solid waste environmental assessment for $2 million is in this budget for special projects, and that will carry on $2 million per annum over the next few years to help guide that waste management strategy. We have a new city website that is being updated in 2025. Obviously, for staff and the modernization plan, we need to invest in information technology, both from an expansionary perspective and or in new software. There's a Parks Master Plan, an official plan, and a flood hazard identification. Those are the big highlights from the special projects. And again, those are funded out of that $3.9 million transfer to reserve from the operating into those lines. Next steps, as you can see from the budget calendar I just showed you, September is busy. Dear Budget Committee, we will meet regularly until we get through and discuss the dilemma of the $15 million challenge ahead of us. And I have no doubt we will work to mitigate those as we receive the departmental budgets and ask questions on those. We will develop the budget strategy for you and present to you as part of the October 10th and 11th deliberations, and from there seek your advice as to what will move forward to the mayor's proposed budget. Included in the budget strategy will be several facets of that. So we will identify perhaps refinements as we go through the Budget Committee departmental presentations, through your questions, advice to staff. There will be service level options. Only Budget Committee and Council can make service level option discussions. Staff are not authorized to make increases or decreases to service levels. We might want to consider increased user fees to help with that balance of the majority, 58% of our revenues are from property tax. We may wish to include things like utilizing some of those stabilization reserves and or the longer term reserves to reduce some of the increases. And we have some stabilization reserves. I would note for you, one is winter control, for example. It's approximately sitting at $2 million. We have a library stabilization reserve sitting at $864,000. We will determine with you whether that is a strategy that you wish to use to reduce some of the increases in the gross expenditures. With that, Mr. Chair, I would welcome any questions from the committee.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. Is there any questions? Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Director, excuse me, Director Buchanan. If you could go back to slide 21. And if you can just run through that again for me. It was rather quick, and I just need to understand that better. The $2 million in wages and benefits were pushed down to transfers to reserves. Explain that, please.
Correct, thank you. So in the 2024 budget and all years previous to that, there has always been an amount set aside in terms of what peaks or valleys might occur in the overall city wages. So for instance, union contracts, market adjustments, it is our recommendation that as opposed to keeping that as a contingency, that the Council and Budget Committee start actually setting money aside in a reserve for people services stabilization. And then as peaks or valleys occur in the wages, you would simply draw it out of that reserve to help fund. So for instance, this year, there happened to be a lot of successful negotiations. Our colleagues in People Services have been very busy with that. May come some additional costs associated with the wages, and this reserve would give you one such way to balance that out.
Thank you. And then back to page 27. So the multifaceted approach, could we not add a bullet point there of deferment? Oh no, that's capital. This is operating, never mind.
Correct. So in the operating, it would, if you were to look for perhaps a deferment, you would actually be recommending a service level reduction if you were to look for something in the operating.
As soon as the words were out of my mouth, I realized that. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, through you, Chair. On page 24, we talk about that new tax stabilization at 50K, 500K. Do you think that's, I mean, should it be higher?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Included in our long-term strategy presentation June 4th, we recommended and instantiated the new reserve called the stabilization. And as a matter of policy going forward, when the city experiences pardon me, operating budget surpluses, it will also go to the tax stabilization reserve. So in the 2023 year-end report, April 30th, you did make a contribution to the stabilization reserve, and we're now recommending that we slowly and steadily build up a $500,000 commitment every year per year. And so at this point in time, we can look up the balance in that reserve and get that for you. 3.7 million is currently in there, and we had recommended a target for you in our June meeting. So we feel that perhaps being prudent and just slow and steady at 500K per annum will get you where you need to be on that reserve.
Yeah, thank you. I have one question. When do we receive the impact results for taxes for your, so impact is going to be redoing all our taxes, and when do we receive that, and when will we be able to use that money if it goes up, which it probably will?
So thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. When MPAC, Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, is legislated through MMAH, they will undertake an update to all of the assessed values of properties in the province of Ontario. They have not given that mandate yet, and they are the only body who can give direction to MPAC for that. However, I do want to caution that when you reassess and you increase the value of a property, it doesn't directly equate to new tax revenue. It simply spreads the 15 million that you would be looking for here across a larger base. So an increase to Charlie McDonald's home, if I may use as an example, if MPAC were to increase your assessed value from, say, 600,000 to 1 million, that doesn't naturally equate to a tax increase. It simply is how we disperse the tax across all of the assessed values.
Okay, thank
Ms.
you.
Liotti can do much better at that than I can this afternoon when we are presenting corporate services.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Can I have a motion to receive the operating budget kickoff presentation? Councillor Richardson, second by Councillor Joyce. Thank you. Okay, thank you. 4.2, we'll go to the departmental budget presentation by Juan Rojas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are a little bit ahead of schedule, so I only have part of my staff here, but the rest of them will come probably closer to 1:45. I will introduce them as they attend or as they make their presence. So thank you for having me. This is an overview or a presentation of our 2025 operating budget for the Engineering and Corporate Assets Division of the City of Kawartha Lakes. So just through the agenda, and this is going to be standard for all departmental presentations. So we're going to go through the org chart, a department overview, division overview, variances, accomplishments and priorities, budget pressures for 2025, and then requested change to the operating budget. So briefly, and again, I'll get into more details of the various 6 divisions, including the admin division, which is the 7th division for engineering corporate assets. So at a high level, we've made up of various 6 divisions within engineering corporate assets. I won't read them here because we're going to talk to them in detail in the upcoming slides. So the department overview. Engineering and corporate assets is responsible for the overall management of various divisions, including but not limited to the crossing guard program, management of municipal airport, feasibility planning, department goals, capital budget, maintaining asset registry, capital planning studies, major capital grant applications, development with infrastructure that conforms to city standards, capital construction, including roads, water and wastewater projects and landfills, and then programs for roads, traffic signals, street lights, drainage, municipal drainage, and some drainage issues, and sidewalks. We're very focused on asset management and capital projects. We do align our work with various other operational divisions, but engineering doesn't have an operational arm outside of the airport. So the airport, we handle operations of the airport and capital projects of the airport, but excluding the airport, every other division is capital-based or development-based. Okay, so the financial tables. So the next 9 slides are all going to be financial comparables. So the first slide is an overview or a summary of the various 7 divisions. And then we're going to go into 7 slides of the divisions themselves. And then the final 9th slide will be, again, back to an overview, but with the variances. With the major variances. So I'm going to spend a little time on the departmental summary. So if you can see here, the $289,012 is our variance departmental, all divisions in engineering, between the proposed 2025 and what was approved in 2024. But just for some history, and we could go back prior to 2022, but for the purpose of this budget, we picked 2022 as our benchmark. Again, not just engineering, but all departments are going to look similar. We had a budget, an actual spent in 2022 of $2.115 million. That's what we actually spent. Compared to what we budgeted for was $2.128 million. So pretty good. We were under budget by $12,781. And that trend is if you go back to 2019, 2018, that's on the light side. We usually are a little bit better than that, but we were under budget by almost 13,000, so good for us. We had a very, very good year in 2023. So we spent 1.65 million, and we had budgeted 2.2 million. So we were under budget by $567,254. And the primary reason for that was up here in our revenue. You could see we had a huge revenue from 2022 to 2023. So we had a revenue of $773,000 in 2022 and a jump to almost 1.6 million in 2023. The 2 major factors our revenue are our sales, our airport fuel sales and land holdings at the airport, which were very successful, and our DAP fees, the development application approval processing fees that go with new development. So it doesn't really equate to housing stats because our development or our DAP fee is paid prior to any houses being built at the agreement stage. So we had a lot of agreements and collection in 2023. So that's why you see that large jump. And then in 2024, we're coming back down to earth at 1.2 and holding that trend of 1.2 proposed in 2025. And then again, our budget in 2024 was 2.2 million. Our actuals as of Q2 is just over $1 million. So we're trending to be around $2 million range. So well within our budget and under budget. And that's the sort of benchmark we used. And then I'll get to the proposed 2.5 million for 2025. And again, also this variance of $289,012. And you'll see in the next slide, this $289,012 is made up of the variances in the next 7 slides that you'll see. So if you add those variances, they're going to add up to 289. And again, when we get to the last slide for the variance overview, you'll see the 289 again. Okay. Okay, there we go. So the administrative overview, again, this is the administrative support for engineering and corporate assets. So in 2024, in 2025, we're going to have a director, myself, an EA, an AA, and we're proposing a new engineering clerk to assist on all the various admin duties. Again, to note here, you're going to see some anomalies in 2022. You'll see all the salary for the 3 engineering divisions, so 3 out of the 6 divisions we have in our division. The 3 engineering divisions are infrastructure design and construction, technical services, and development engineering. In 2022, all the salaries were rolled up into the admin budget. Since as starting on 2023, we distributed those salaries to the various business units. So that's why you see in 2022 is 1.7, and now in 2025 it's $500,000. We haven't laid anyone off. It's because that number was then distributed to the the 3 other engineering-centric divisions. Again, and we have a variance of $74,000 for the admin. Corporate assets overview. This was always a standalone division, so that's why you see no variance or pretty close for salaries and wages in 2022. It's pretty much, so there's a variance of $21,000, but it's pretty consistent. We have reduced the corporate assets overview. And the manager of this division is Adam Found. He'll probably show up in about 10 minutes. I'll introduce him when he gets here. We're reducing it by $53,000, and that's really in the contracted services line. So in the past, we've had our DC appeals, our asset management template inventory, various different contracted services embedded within this operating budget. We have now shifted them out and put them into special projects. So that's why you're seeing a reduction here, but you're going to have a corresponding, or that money will just flow to a special project line, because that's where it should be. It should never been in the operating budget. So we're just right sizing what our practice is, but it's still a reduction of $53,222. Okay, so our next 3 divisions, here we come to the the engineering-centric division, or the classic engineering divisions. Again, you'll notice in our actual salaries in 2022 was $8,460. Again, because the majority of that salary was in the overall, and then as of 2023, we sort of spread them out within the division. This is the division is led by Christina Sisson, who's to your right. Most of the variances are in our user fees of $32,000. Again, there's a number. We almost broke $1 million. So our DAP fee in 2023 was $937,576. Just to put it into some context, when I first started in 2010, we'll use 2011, we collected just over 100,000. It was like 105,000 worth of DAP fees. In 2023 was a record year. We almost broke $1 million in DAP fees. Again, as of June of 2024, Q2, we're at 326. Our budget was 561, so we're at 58% of the way there, so pretty close. And we're projecting 593 in 2025. So all good. Again, another pressure is the salary, wages, and benefits. Again, that's probably the lion's share of this overage of 86,000. That has to do with market adjustments, collective bargaining agreements, that sort of thing. We are going to revisit our DAP fee again in 2025, so that gap potentially could narrow. The next engineering-centric division is infrastructure design and construction. The manager of that is Corby Purdy. Again, same explanation for the wages. Now they're standardized. There are some new positions being proposed. in 2025, but those positions are offset by capital. So when we do in-house contract admin and inspection, in our capital budget, we budget for contract admin and inspection. Some of those projects we consult out, which is great, and some of those projects we do in-house. So when we do the projects in-house, we are essentially our own consultants, and our staff wages gets charged to the capital for the capital projects that they manage. So that's why there's an offset there. Again, a variance of 57,000. That rolls up into the 289,000 you saw on the first page. The technical services overview, again, the manager is Mike Farquhar, who's to your right. The first line for grants, that is the municipal drain superintendent grant that we get from OMAFRA. So every year, OMAFRA contributes 50% of salaries and benefits to a municipality that has municipal drains and has a municipal drain superintendent. So that's essentially our one revenue. We are right-sizing the material and training services line, very minor. And again, most of the pressures are on salaries, a variance of almost 35,000. The Crossing Guard program is managed by our EA, Lisa Pineman. She had a prior commitment that she couldn't make this meeting, but she is in charge of the overall administration for engineering, and she is the lead or the manager for the Crossing Guard program. We've had a couple new Crossing Guard positions filled. The major variance is in the material training and services, mostly mileage. So we have spares. So for permanent crossing guards, they don't get paid mileage. That's their home position. They go to that location. But when we have vacancies, we have to send our spares or send our crossing guards that are in Lindsay over to Bubcaygeon or over to Fenelon. So out of fairness, because we're asking them to travel, they could charge mileage to their temporary location while we get that backfilled. So that's really our biggest variance there. And that's the lion's share of that 27,164. Again, with salary, wages, and benefits also driving it. Okay, so our last division, Kawartha Lakes Municipal Airport. So currently the Kawartha Lakes Municipal Airport is contracted out to a third party, still run through engineering. It's our contract. We are coming up to our fifth year and final year of the current contract, which expires on June 2025. The current contract is currently awarded to Lumix. And in early January, February, we are going to put an RFP out for a new 5-year term, whatever vendor is successful. The largest pressures here, got truncated. So our largest pressures here, again, the variance is 61,800. We have a variance of 61,800 interdepartmental adjustments. Here it is. So 24,350. That is our property tax. So we have to, as the airport, we own land, just like any other landholders. We have to pay property taxes to ourselves, but the expense is in the engineering budget. The revenue is in tax and rev. So it's an in and out, but it's in and out in two separate budgets. So that's why you see the expense in our budget. And again, that's a good chunk of that 61,000. The other one is contracted services. We're not bad. We're running a little bit over, 57% spent as of Q2. Again, we anticipate that there's going to be an increase next year on the 5-year, the new 5-year term. Again, a modest 10,000, it might be more or less. The other driver is fuel sales. Fuel sales. So our fuel sales, it's a gas station for airplanes. Makes decent money, just like any other gas station does. So our sales are very competitive with Peterborough and Oshawa, and we anticipate the revenue in the fuel sales will offset some of the revenues in the contracted service, so that's why we just put a modest amount there.
Yeah, a question, where is the rent for the restaurant and so on in that?
Yeah, the lease is under revenue. So under this 640, or we'll use 2024. So under 677,150, if you drill down on the revenue, you have the lease for the restaurants, you have the Robinson hangar, which is a unique one. You have, I think, 12 25-year custom hangars. You have 20 T hangars, or a month-to-month or a year basis. And then you have month-to-month costs for tie-downs or parking spots for airports. And we probably have 30 or 40 tie-downs. So that's our source of revenue. Again, the airport, if you ignore our tax payment is in the neighborhood of 50,000 a year, our property taxes for the airport basically breaks even, which is unheard of for a municipal airport. Usually they're nowhere near breaking even. And I think a few years back, we made about 20, 30,000, right? So a break even is our benchmark. We're right on the cusp. Again, if you ignore the property taxes we pay to ourselves. Okay, so this is our summary slide again. You'll see the 289,000 variance that I walked you through. Again, I think I've explained all the different variances in this table, but I'll gladly take questions regarding this after my presentation. So a couple slides left. So accomplishments, we have 2 pages of accomplishments. It's built over onto the second page. So I'm going to do the 2024 first and then come back to the 2025. So I'll do this slide and then the next slide, then I'll come back. So accomplishments in 2024, again, supported the housing commitment through the successful development and review and approvals. Again, this is through our development engineering team. There are several construction projects, so I don't want anyone to be feel left out. We do a lot of construction projects, but the Rainbow Bridge construction, we had a little photo op, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony, so we put it up there. 2014 DC appeals that were ongoing in 2024, we're at the settlement stage. Council will receive a closed report later on that. But that was a huge milestone. It's been appealed since 2020, so it's 10 years later, and we're very, very close to wrapping it up. I'm going to consider an accomplishment. The asset management plan for non-core assets, the long-term financial plan that you've heard a lot about, the tax-supported water wastewater capital budget. We had a duplicate here on the next slide. DC appeals, they liked it so much they put it up there twice, which is fine. The transportation master plan, which is scheduled to be completed through our technical services group, through Mike's group, tentatively scheduled to come to the December council meeting. I also want to acknowledge the master servicing plan, which is just as important as the transportation master plan. Master servicing plan is headed by our infrastructure design and construction group through Corby Purdy. Again, tentatively earmarked for the December council meeting. So that December council meeting is going to be a lot of information at that meeting. Kent Hill Beach drainage improvements. Again, this is a legacy project that was headed by our manager, Mike Farquhar, through technical services. and the Curtin Municipal Drain. I know municipal drains are a very unique animal, could be controversial, so it's quite an accomplishment for the Curtis Municipal Drain. We usually average 1 or 2 municipal drains a year, which is pretty good for our municipality of our size. So let me go back one. Sorry. So 2025 priorities, again, the housing commitment. This is through Christina Sisson and Development Engineering. Just continue to improve timelines, approvals, development process to facilitate other goals the municipality has, in particular our housing targets. So without the development approval and the planning arm of it, they facilitate actually building the house, because you need to have those elements before. So again, it's our top priority. It's council's top priority. So we listed it as such. Colburn Street Bridge design completion. We're not planning to construct the Colburn Street Bridge in 2025, but we do want to wrap up the prep work and the design completion in 2025. Commencement of the construction of Highway 7 pump station and associated infrastructure along Lindsay Street. Last council, or 2 councils ago, council endorsed the Highway 7 pump station EA. That went very well. We have, in a couple weeks, a public meeting for the infrastructure, the sewer and water on Lindsay Street, PIC coming up. And we have that budgeted in the 2025 capital budget. Again, this will facilitate much needed housing development in that corner of Lindsay. It's the southeast corner of Lindsay. A consolidated asset management plan, long-term financial plan. Again, it's not, so we create a long-term financial plan and we update it, but it's a very dynamic document. It doesn't just sit there, right? So every year we have to update it, we have to track it, we have to see where we are, and we have to make adjustments as required. Tax-supported water, wastewater capital budgets. Again, you'll be deliberating on that and discussing that in the upcoming meetings. So we talked about the 2014 DC appeal. The 2015 and 2019 were also appealed. So our plan is to get a lot of the major work is in the 14 appeal that should make the 15 and the 19 appeal a little bit smoother. But we hope to tackle that in 2025. Water, wastewater rate study and financial plan, and our stormwater master plan. So our last stormwater master plan was done, I believe, in 2004 to 2006. So they're about 20 years old. We're on the cusp of completing the transportation master plan and the water, sanitary sewer master plan. So then by extension, the stormwater master plan would be the next major master plan to be completed by engineering. And we're targeting to start that in 2025. So budget pressures, we have a lot, but I try to summarize them into 3. Just like every division, recruiting and retention may influence the operating budget. So we have a couple vacancies in engineering. We're pretty good. But again, filling those vacancies, recruiting them is always a pressure. Our people services department have done an excellent job in their retention strategy, but it's always a pressure. So utilization of consultants for development review for larger and unique applications. So I just threw this out there because we have some major MZOs that are going to be reviewed in the upcoming years that are very unique to the city and to all municipalities in the province. And they have a large component of servicing review, track of review, not like any other previous development. So currently we do 100% of our development review in-house. There are elements that we outsource, like a traffic impact study that we do peer reviews. But the lion's share of the review historically has been done in-house through Christina Sisson's group. There is a possibility, because of the nature of the work and the size of the work, that we may have to outsource some of the more unique ones. So that's an unknown. So that's why we listed it as a pressure. And the last one is just the duration of the construction. As I mentioned before, through Corby's group and through Mike's group, so technical services and infrastructure design and construction group, they both manage capital projects and programs. We've been finding that due to ongoing changes in legislation, like the soil management policy, high groundwater, some of these construction projects are extended. And for some of the projects, we do our own contract them in and inspection in-house. And if the duration extends, then the staff assigned to them extends. In addition to that, we are looking at streamlining through corporate services. We're looking at streamlining various different software reporting and approval processes, which would require training of staff. And at the end of the day, it would be a more seamless procedure, but it requires some upfront training of staff, which could be a pressure. And then modeling. Again, we have our two major master plans, transportation and water and wastewater. They both have respective models. The water wastewater model, we utilize sewer gems and sewer and water gems. It's an offshoot of a CAD software model specifically for water and wastewater that will require some training, some more modeling, and some more staff time. And again, with the various development applications that we see forthcoming in the next 5 to 10 years or sooner, it will require more in-depth modeling at the staff level. So again, that's an identified pressure in 2025. I think that concludes my presentation. Open up for questions through you, Mr. Chair.
Any questions? Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, through you. Thanks, Juan. Recognizing how important our market adjustments are to recruitment and attraction for our city, how many positions are you looking for new for the whole budget process next year? Is it just the one? Because you did say you had some vacancies, so I just want to clarify the new positions.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I believe currently we have 2 vacancies in the engineering department. I believe we have either 1 or 2 vacancies in our spare crossing guard program. So very minimal. In the 2025 budget, and this is more of a maybe corporate services question, we are proposing 3 new positions to the engineering and corporate asset division. One is an additional admin support, and then 2 are in our infrastructure design and construction group specifically for water, wastewater related projects, because that's our big driver. That's our bottleneck for development, right? Is the capacity of the plants, not just in Lindsay, but in Lindsay, Bobcaygeon, and Fenland, and all the other satellite water treatment plants or wells or sewage plants.
No, and that's actually great to hear that, because that's one of the questions as a counselor that we're constantly being asked is about capacity and make sure that we are growing properly. So I totally get that we need to invest in those type of positions to grow properly. I think I do have another question, but I'll let Dan.
Thank you. Through the chair, great presentation. So Mike, I've got a few questions here. When it says actuals to June, is that end of June?
Yes, it's through you, Mr. Chair. It's through the end of Q2, which would be the end of June.
Okay.
So again, in an ideal world, that one column should be at 50%. So for the most part, we're close.
Yeah. So this is a question probably more for Director Bukaboom. I'm also on salaries and wages. Is it reasonable to say all things being equal, in terms of staff levels, we'll see a 3 to 4% increases in salaries, wages, benefits, or is that not accurate? What should we be looking at?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor. Wages are a presentation that the CAO and myself will do on Monday, September 16th, and we get much more in depth into the impact of the various union negotiations that you, council, have given direction to People Services to ratify. We have market increases in there. We have some new staff positions. So we're going to bring you a full, all-encompassing topic, presentation just on wages on Monday. So we can answer that a little more fulsomely then. We were trying to not ask some of those detailed questions department by department, and we'll do the whole organization chart with you on Monday.
Thank you. Where I'm going with this is when we look at budgets and we see, let me just take 6% just for argument's sake, and we see it's a 12% increase. Clearly that's a new position in there. And what I want to propose is, for our benefit and the public's benefit, is any new position be clearly identified on the why, what they're doing, and if we don't hire them, how are our service levels affected? I think that's very important. Interesting about the air, so I have a comment on the MZOs. Not only does the province force that on us, but now we're faced with increased cost to try to manage them. That is not reimbursed by the province. Anyways, interesting about the airport. Other municipalities face losses. So what's the magic mix here that we're breaking even? If you can, it's great news to have, and if you can elaborate on that more, I find that interesting.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, I want to give some dues to Lumix. Lumix is an excellent third-party provider. They've been with us for 5, maybe 6 years. They've performed very well. We're, I think, very unique in Kawartha Lakes. Our operating expenses are small. They're not great. And we have a lot of leases. So the leases themselves, so we have, again, about a dozen 25-year custom-built leases. We have 20 T-hangar leases, and we have one large Robinson hangar and the restaurant. I think that revenue stream model, so when I first started in 2010, we had the Robinson hangar, who's been there for a while. We had one 10-unit T-hangar, now we have 2, and we had no 25-year leases, right? And we always had the restaurant. The restaurant was hit and miss. So we are basically at full capacity now at the airport regarding tenants. We have a flight school there that's very well received, and we're looking to expand even further for other tenants. That in combination with the fuel sales, so we went to an automated ATM type machine for fuel sales. We're very aware of where our competitors are, and we've marketed and advertised to different flying clubs and different aviators to come to Lindsay for your fuel. So they've done an excellent job of promoting and enhancing the airport. We've also partnered up with Kawartha Classics car, and every Wednesday during the summer, you come in, get a burger, and see the classic cars or the fancy cars out there. So again, I think that's the key. We've been marketing the airport extremely well over the last 4 or 5 years, and it's evident by almost or breaking even.
Thank you. And exactly is it Loomis you said? What do they do?
So Lumix is they also manage the Peterborough Airport, and they're strictly a consultant that specializes in municipal airports. Right? I'm sure they do other things, but their specialty is municipal airports. They were hired when the airport was run by an airport board, an airport management board. Now it's run by, it reports to the Director of Engineering and Corporate Assets, and we have an airport advisory board. But that was by design. The airport board, management board, did a core service review, and they said, okay, we really want to be an advisory board, not a management board. And then we had other efficiencies we put in place. Again, breaking even is no small feat. So again, kudos to my EA, Lisa Pyman, who sort of manages that, and Lumex, who's our third party. But it's a combination of things.
Great. Thank you. It's a great explanation.
Thank you, I found my question. On page 3, so overall, we're looking at a budget increase of 13.02% for your department. The interfunctional adjustments at 33%. Can you just give me that breakdown again, just because I felt like I missed it? Because that is at that 33% right now.
Yes, just let me, okay. So in the past, there's various components to the interfunctional adjustments. In the past, we would keep the salaries where they were, and for when we charged salaries back to capital, that would be an interfunctional adjustment. So now we've embedded that adjustment right in the salary line, number one. Number two is fleet. So number two is our fleet charges that we go back to Public Works fleet, and not just engineering corporate assets, but anyone that has a vehicle gets charged a fleet charge, and that's now that makes up the lion's share of the interfunctional adjustments, right? Now we have a variety of fleets. So we have a series of so we have no specialty fleets. So we have no snow plows, graders, heavy equipment. All our fleet is passenger vehicles. The majority of it is pickup trucks. I think we have one minivan and a few small cars or compact cars. For the majority of our fleet, we rent internally. So we either own them or we rent them for a period of time through our fleet department. But our fleet department can't provide us all the vehicles we need. So every year we rent through Enterprise for a 3, 4, 5 month period. So we're renting cars from Enterprise temporarily. Now there is a strategy to wean us off of that, but again, a lot of the cost or variance in interfunctional adjustments is through our internal fleet charge.
Okay, any other questions? Go ahead, Councillor.
That's interesting. That begs the question: is it cheaper to rent for 4 to 5 months versus paying mileage on a personal car? Like,
Yeah, so through you, Mr. Chair, so this is a conversation that has been had and reviewed. Not only that, is also the question is it cheaper to lease for 3 years as opposed to rent, right? So I think our corporate assets, our corporate services division and our public works division have investigated that. And I don't really know the answer to that question right now.
well, I think our staff is probably choosing the best viable option. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Thank you very much for your presentation today. Could I have a motion to receive the report from Juan Hoas? Oh, Councillor Joyce, second by Councillor Richardson. Thank you very much. Let's take a 10-minute break, and we'll be back at 25 after 2.
If I can suggest that we
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting back to order, please. We are at 4.3, the departmental budget presentation by Sarah Bukaboom. Go ahead, Sarah.
Good morning, good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to present corporate services this afternoon. We do have a lot of the managers in the room, so if you don't mind, I'll pause for just a moment and do some introductions. The first boss is our executive assistant, Nadine Bloomfield, who manages all things budget. I don't make a move unless Nadine says yes. Sherry Davidson, manager of communications. Carolyn Danes, the city treasurer, manager of treasury. Our new chief information officer, Pete Evans, although not so new, it's been maybe a year or so now. On my right, we have the chief people officer, Leanna Patterson. Strategic and innovation, Brenda Stonehouse, and Jessica Hood is the lead budget analyst. And again, I don't make a move until I ask these ladies. Missing today due to a flat tire, but she's listening along with us, is manager Liotti, revenue and taxation. We feel like we are the cobbler's children. We have been so busy getting everybody else's budgets and presentations ready with them and the corporate that here we go on our own department. So here we go. First of all, our department is organized into the following functional. Sorry, I have a red light here. Constance, thank you. We're divided up into the functional areas of administration, which is the director's office, AAs, and the EA lives in there, communication, advertising, and marketing, people services, information technology, revenue and taxation, treasury, and strategy and innovation. Corporate services overview. We're responsible to lead, monitor, and manage all corporate functions within the city, including, but certainly not limited to, financial and human resource management, effective corporate communication, strategic information, technology practices and initiatives, managing tax and the utility levies and collections, and strategy and innovation. And all other things not assigned to any other department would be the catch-all. The overall budget this year is sitting at $13.5 million compared to $10.9 million in 2024, and I will walk you through where that budget variance of 2.5 is derived. I do want to comment that as a department, while the rest of the corporation and departments have been growing and meeting their growth needs, corporate services is now feeling the pressure of a lot of that new work. The new legislated requirements being undertaken by the departments are now having an impact on corporate services to deliver that service to the entire city. On slide 6 is the administrative overview. This is the general administration of the department, including council liaison, SMT representative, corporate budget coordination, strategic planning, all things work planning for the entire department. Very minimal impact on the budget here with an increase of $27,000. We have reallocated some training dollars down to the individual divisions to allow them to better supervise and manage that line item. So as a whole, the administration area has a very minimal impact in the variance for this department. The next area under people services, this is responsible for recruitment, training, employee benefits, labor relations, compensation management, payroll, health and safety. And as council is aware, they've been a very busy division this year, and the successful ratification of many, many contracts and the implementation of the compensation strategy. There's an increase on this line, this division of $833,000, and I was going to just take a moment to go through some of those. Again, as referenced, salaries and wages isn't all necessarily contract ratification or the market, and we'll review at a higher level with the CAO on Monday, but there are some new positions in there as well. Materials and supplies. We have lowered the corporate-wide training under the material supplies and training line. So 50,000 has been reduced there citywide, and you'll see a net reduction of almost 30,000 on that line. In terms of contract services, a slight increase of 20,000 over last year, and that's based on actual experience in regards to the recruitment that the city is undertaking. On the interfunctional adjustment line, this has been typically a charge out to other departments, and in 2024, you will notice it was a net revenue of 103,852, and this year, a net revenue of 907,889, and this year it's at 729. That's as a result of a secondment from the Kawartha Lakes Police Service to this department, and it's been run through the interfunctional adjustments line. The other item to note is the revenue stream called Transfer from Reserves of 103,852 is no longer a viable source of financing in 2025. That was the Employee Recognition Reserve, and it has been utilized in the 2024 budget to its full extent. The next slide, page 8, is the Communication, Advertising, and Marketing Division. Very minimal impact here on the overall. Again, in terms of wages, we'll get into the depths of that on Monday in discussions with you. The CAMS division is responsible to provide strategic communication, marketing, and media relations. We are increasing public awareness and engagement with city programs and services. So as one example, you might notice the city is launching an Instagram page. All of this is part of our outreach and public education. As mentioned earlier, you will notice on the website there's a lot more engagement around this budget process and asking the public what it is they wish to hear from you, council, and we as staff. Under materials, there's been a minor modification increase of 10,000 on the materials line. On contracted services, again, very minimal, but what the city is doing is increasing the seasonal messaging, and there will be 4 messages per annum as opposed to previously 2. So there's been an impact to this budget in that area. On slide 9, IT. As a whole, I would like to start by saying, in order to modernize and in order to right-size and give staff across the whole corporation the tools to do their job, IT is integral to that. So you will notice a lot of modernization things coming forward, remote work. There's a lot of work trying to catch up to the world, if you will, in the terms of IT and the services we can offer our staff to do that work, as well as to the residents. IT maintains the electronic systems and the infrastructure, the applications, maintenance and support, and client support services. And we have heard loud and clear from staff out in the departments that they require some more integrated tools with which to deliver their services and do their job. So that all comes from the central corporate department. In terms of wages, in this line, you will see that there's actual a reduction in the budget variance, and that is because we have changed the methodology in terms of IT. A lot of their work is to support smaller projects, if you will, and so we're going to allocate the wage and the time to those projects, similar to how Director Rojas just talked you through with some of the construction projects. We're going to follow that same methodology in terms of our projects here. Contracted services is where you're going to see the largest impact at almost $50,000. This is somewhat beyond the city's control. The vendors that run these systems, well, they don't really negotiate price with the city of Kawartha Lakes. They are players like Microsoft. They are our license holders who tell us what we will pay in order to have these software systems. As a whole, we've seen them go up anywhere from 3 to 10% in terms of our agreements for our software maintenance licenses with them. We do have some key major increases we'd like to highlight for you. Microsoft, which includes our SharePoint, Exchange Online, our email, all of the basic tools to do any of the work that we do, council included, there's an increase of $200,000 in the Microsoft contract line. That's not one we can go out and get 3 quotes on. Microsoft is Microsoft. In terms of IT security, email, our mobile pass to protect the city from cyber attacks, the firewall protection, that is approximately $126,000 with a 5% increase in there. Our financial system, citywide, JDE, charges us their license fees. We're also expanding to allow people to do their jobs in the field more access to these systems. As well, we are working on improved customer services and mobility in the field, so we have a $100,000 pressure on that line. IT has made efforts to ensure that the city is following government negotiated pricing where we're able to with the larger contracts, and we do buy into the co-op buying power in that regard. So it is an area that we are well aware might be a little bit of a stick out like a sore thumb, but we are doing the best to manage the administrative side of this as diligently as we can. On the line of interfunctional adjustments, that line has gone from $1.2 million in 2024 as a revenue source down to $772,000. That's a direct result of, instead of running things through the interfunctional adjustments, we're trying to clear that account out and be rid of it at some point. What we've done, though, is take some of the charges to our third party or our departments. For instance, paramedics, they have specific software. We've direct billed paramedics for that service, so it's much more open and transparent when we file our government grant applications, and the ministry doesn't need to ask us what's buried in that interfunctional line. So while it looks like the revenue has been reduced, we've also reduced the expense and charged them directly for some of those. The next slide is our treasury. This group is responsible for investment and debt management, all of the financial accounting, inventory, subledger cost accounting, accounts payable, purchasing, the annual audit requirements, financial statements, and oversight, lending support into the budget process. And so a joint effort in order to get this budget prepared. The accounting and oversight team was busy working on the Q2 actuals to bring you most up-to-date information. There's a net variance here of 337, with a major component of that being in the wages, salaries, and benefits line, and we'll give you further update on that on Monday again with the overall city org chart. I will comment ever so briefly on the interfunctional adjustments. There historically had been 2 positions that were allocated out to the Human Services area department, and we were running that through the interfunctional. As opposed to that, we've now charged the Human Services directly for those 2 positions, and you'll see a reduction on the interfunctional revenue here down to the effect of $82,000 in this budget. Next, we have strategy and innovation. This area, as you're well aware, is responsible for the strategic plan and the exercise that Council endeavored in early 25 to adopt the city strategic plan. In addition, they also will be reporting out on the strategic plan and the milestones, how Council is doing in regard to the actions you set out. It includes scorecards and alignment across the organization to make sure those multifaceted goals are being met. They're also an independent internal consultant to aid in business case review, scenario testing, et cetera, if a division wants to look at a different way of delivering a service. They're a project manager, and they lead support the continuous improvement initiative across the corporation. But with a variance of $1,519, I think we can just move on from that one. And on the next slide, again, Ms. Liotti is attending via stream today. It's the revenue and taxation. This is where we manage the assessment base. So to the chair's point, this is where MPAC is the liaison through revenue and tax. We develop the property taxation policies and manage the quarterly billing. It's also responsible for utility billing and accounts receivable in this overall division. There are two components, revenue and taxation, and the utility is broken out separately for the fact that it is funded from the water and wastewater user rate versus the general tax. So revenue and tax is funded from the general tax on this slide, and the overall impact is an increase of $111,000 this year. There is an increase favorable of $50,000 as a result of the new homes coming on board. The setup costs for those accounts generates revenue for the city, so we've increased that to $514,000. You will see an impact increase on the wage line. And in terms of the debt, lease, and financial, very minimal impact, but the more transactions we're doing with the bank, the more those service charges come up in that area. And on to the utility billing, also under Manager Liotti. And this is the water wastewater fund, which is your separate bill from the city's tax bills. We have right-sized here. We've been over-aggressive in setting user fee and new administration fee revenues in the past, so we're slightly right-sizing that to match the actual results in the revenue, so a decrease of $36,000 on that line. Some impact to wages. Again, you will be hearing a lot of modernization on this theme in the near future. Some of you are probably aware of the remote reads that we're working on in terms of allowing the residents to read their water bills in real time. The city would be flagged. This is the work and effort undergoing through the wages in this category. Another point to mention is the interfunctional. This line has increased from $450,000 to $755,000. This is the direct result of charging the water wastewater fund for the recovery of this division, and it would always have a net impact of 0 on the tax base. Next slide on the accomplishments and priorities, and this is where I will beef up the 2025 priorities. Again, my apologies. We've been very busy getting the whole city's budget together, and more pause for what we're working on in this area. Accomplishments under 2024, similar to Director Rojas's, we are integral partners in updates to the long-term financial plan. When they move, we move. When we move, they move. So that's on both divisions. We've ratified several union agreements just up till as recently as this month. So the People Services Division has been very, very busy and great accomplishments. We've updated the communication strategy to run from 2024 to 2027. We have successfully migrated SharePoint to the cloud, which is a time saver for all staff. Things are much easier. We can have the tools at our disposal in order to perform our jobs all across the city with that major achievement. We've been very active in replacing the water meters, and the point of replacing those water meters was 1, due to the aging infrastructure, but 2, allow us to be set up successfully so that the remote water meter program would be able to be seamless. We have adopted the strategic plan 2024 to 2027 with the work of the strategy and innovation in this council and the public engagement. So a lot was going on in 2024. In 2025, we're continuing to meet the goals of Council's strategic plan, one of which was improving the customer experience with digital transformation. One such example is in several softwares or where we're charging a customer, we are moving on providing platforms so that they can do that online. They don't need to come in person, no more paper applications. They don't have to come in with a check. We are completely modernizing how we interact with our customer. We will do a new long-term financial plan update, again, together with Director of Engineering in that department in terms of modernizing the figures. As you've been seeing, our 2022 plan has had several reasons why it's already out of date now for the 2025 year, and we have a legislative requirement to submit our asset management plan to the province June 2025. Included in the long-term financial plan will be a reserve strategy and policy will come before council early 2025. The debenture strategy and debt management policy will come before council. All the things we've been talking about during the capital budget discussions. We'll also be a partner in the water wastewater financial plan and the successful long-term financial plan, whether 3%, for instance, on the user fees is accurate for taking us 10 years, 5 years into the future. We're going to really beef up the continuous improvement or make it better across the corporation. Training is currently underway on 12 yellow belts. So as we support those yellow belts, we'll monitor and manage the improvements across the corporation. Finance modernization is also /IT modernization. So back to where I was saying the tools for staff to do their job in the most efficient manner possible. Everybody in the city has to use the financial system. Everybody in the city has to use the IT systems we provide. So we're doing a lot of work to bring tools to the divisions that allow them to do their job in the most efficient and have the data available as well in order to address any concerns from public or council. Another highlight, we are doing a pilot for the remote water read program, imminently waiting for the green light to go on that pilot. And as success proves in that pilot area, we would roll that out to a greater extent across the city. We are always looking to enhance communication and public engagement and what do our ratepayers, what do our residents want to hear from us? How do they want to engage? What kind of services do they want to receive? So that's all through the communication and marketing division. And just to highlight a key area of IT, we are working very hard for the remote workers, so those in the field, to have the tools they need to do their job in the field. Reduce the paperwork, reduce the driving back and forth to a depot or to an office to do their work, and give them the tools that they can do right in site. Similar to engineering, if they're out doing an inspection, we want them to have the tools in the field, take the pictures, make their notes, and improve the efficiency in that service delivery. So we have a really big theme in 2025 on what we call the finance and IT modernization. Next slide, again, is the overall impact of the corporate services and as a service delivery model to the entire corporation. This is an area we can help with, and we can alleviate some of the pain points with some of the projects and priorities we have set in our goals for 2025. Any questions on that slide? I'll just move on maybe to the summation of the pressures. We've gone through some of the variances, so we are working hard to invest in staff. Like every other department, there's often vacancies, so it's a full-time job to sometimes go and recruit for those, but we're doing our best to invest in staffing, align job descriptions to the roles within corporate services. We're investing in staff recognition and staff training. In order to utilize these new modern systems and the IT tools, we need to invest in some staff training, or we don't optimize those new modernized tools. We're increasing the seasonal messaging as a way to reach and engage with the public through the communications team. We obviously, as mentioned, have some uncontrollable increases in our IT contracts. There had been reserves at play to help defray some of the 2024 costs in people services. And again, those reserves have been fully utilized, so that reserve transfer is no longer there. So we'll be spending 2025 working through this modernization, upskilling staff, both in corporate services, and our job is to help train across the corporation so that we are as efficient and lean as we can be. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any questions of the Budget Committee?
Any questions? Councillor Joyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. I forget, I didn't write the page number down, but I think it was on staff recognition. All the funds were spent out of the reserve. Did I catch that properly?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there had been a very small reserve that had been present on the books for many years. It was maybe 103,000, and part of our reserve strategy is to clean up some of those old reserves and apply them. And as opposed to having 100 mini little reserves, we're trying to capture them into bigger categories. So this particular one was for employee recognition, and we now budget year in, year out in the budget for that, and we no longer have that former reserve to fund some of those.
But employer recognition is being budgeted.
Correct, very much so, yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, through you. Just on their overall budget. So the budget summary, when we got it at the beginning, it was at 23.08 for corporate services. Then I'm looking at page 15, and I'm just wondering what is your overall increase for this 2025 year?
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. This is the, slide 5 is the overall departmental budget, and the increase from 10.9 million, 11 million in 2024 to 13.5 in 2025 for an increase of 2.5 million.
Which is what percent? Sorry. Who's got your calculator going?
I'm going to look to Jessica on our right, and she can help do that quick math. Approximately just over 10%.
Okay, I just, on our original budget summary sheet, you were at 23.08, so we need to fix that. It's just me looking at numbers. One other question, can you just define the compensation strategy so I have a better understanding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Chair, pardon me. On this matter, I know when I am out of my realm, I will humbly defer to the Chief People Officer to see if she could provide some highlights on the compensation.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I honestly didn't come really prepared for that question. As I think we've talked about a few times, it's got to do with looking at the market for some of these unique jobs we have and doing what we can to maybe achieve part of the market. We brought some information last year of maybe targeting 60th percentile against a group of comparators. And so I think we're going to have more conversation, more in-depth review of that coming up, of how that impacts the budget overall. You will recall there is a compensation policy where there is a list of other municipalities that we compare ourselves against, and then that information is brought forward periodically. I think we review it every 4 years just to see whether or not we're comparable to other municipalities, so we can hire some of these specialized positions that exist in our organization.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you. Could I have a motion to receive Councillor Richardson, seconded by Dan Joy, Councillor Joyce? Yep, thank you. Okay, thank you everybody for coming today for these presentations, and we'll go into, is there any new business anybody have? Seeing none. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Joyce, second. Councillor Richardson, thank you.